This is The Last Laugh. I'm Matt Wilstein from The Daily Beast, and joining me today on the show is everyone's favorite SNL cast member. You can currently hear his voice in the Netflix animated movie Fixed, and see him in theaters in the new Superman movie. Beck Bennett, welcome to The Last Laugh.
Thank you so much. That's a wonderful intro. It's great to be here.
Yeah, we recently found out how beloved you were by your fellow SNL cast members. For anyone who doesn't know, Sarah Sherman was on another podcast, good one, talking about how when she got to the show, all anyone could talk about was, I wish Beck was still here. He was the best.
Yeah, I could not believe that clip. It was like, I talked to some of my friends about it, and it's like, that's like the dream that like you find out somebody comes on and is like, hey, we all talk about how we like this person. He's great. Everybody misses him. And I was kind of having a dumpy day, and my wife sent it to me. It was like, you need to watch this. And I just burst into tears. And it was so sweet. Yeah. And it's one of those things where I'm like, yes, I will not, when somebody says something nice and they compliment you, it's not fun to be like, no, that's not true and deny it. So I fully accept it. It was one of those years, I had just left and I was the only one who left. So I think there was a lot of attention on that. And, it was very sweet. I've heard from the writers, like I was one of those utility players that got a lot of screen time because of my versatility, I think. And I also because of my ability to play older, like authority figures, kind of like Keenan, whether it's my voice or whatever, the amount of time that I was there. So they were struggling to find people to play those roles, I think, after I left, and they missed me.
Yeah, I was curious if you felt like when you got to the show in, I believe, 2013, was there anyone who was like that people were talking about as like, oh, this person just left and we missed them? I mean, I was looking, the year before you left, Fred Armisen, Bill Hader, and Jason Sudeikis all left.
Yeah. Right? I mean, yes, that is correct.
And then heavy hitters.
And then there were 6 of us that came in, 7 of us by the end of the year.
Wow, yeah.
So it was a real Hunger Games type thing. We knew we weren't all going to make it. But so I think that was pretty clear, because they were such big stars on the show. And I think the people did miss them. Yeah. Cause they were so funny. Honestly, one of the people that I heard people talk about was Mike Shoemaker, and how they miss Mike Shoemaker, who does, Seth Meyers' show with him. He runs, he's his producer.
He was a producer on SNL before he left to work with Seth, or he was a writer?
Yeah, he was a producer. And he, people talked about how they missed him, and he was like, in a very, challenging, space. He was one of the voices of positivity and support and strength. So yeah, I heard a lot about how people missed Mike. That was kind of the version of that when I got there. But yeah, that's who we heard a lot about.
Well, when that year, I think the show was definitely in need of some utility players, as you said, definitely some new white guys after those guys left.
Right.
And ended up bringing in all of your sketch group, Good Neighbor, which was very unusual. I mean, it had happened, I guess, with Lonely Island before you, so there was some precedent. But they brought in you and Kyle Mooney to the cast, and then the two other members of your group as writer and director, right?
Yes. Well, actually, they brought in Nick Rutherford the next year as a writer. So really, the first year was just me, Kyle, and Dave.
And yeah, Dave McCary is a director who worked with you guys, and then he started directing shorts for the show. Yeah.
And so it was the two of us and Dave. So it was, it was interesting. They wanted us to do our thing, and we were like, yeah, we can do it without Nick, but. Looking, because it's one of those things where you get SNL and you're like, yes, are you kidding? Like I'm just trying to, piece things together with commercial work and you have so it's one of those things that it makes sense to say yes to, unless you're a little bit further along in your career or something like that. And we weren't. So, we did it. We said yes. But I really do think that if Nick was brought in that first year and we were really able to do what we were able to do, I think it would have been a better fit, if that makes sense. Like he came in the next year, and so we were kind of fragmented. Like he was kind of a little bit off on his own a little bit, and he was really there to help the group work. And I think it kind of, we were already a little fragmented because we had already spent a year figuring out how things worked for us there. So yeah. So it was tough, but yeah, we figured it out.
And I imagine that was tough too, when you're all sort of being considered and you didn't know if they were going to take you and not Kyle, or Kyle and not you, and it could have gone a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
So was that a worry about this group that you had really spent a long time putting together, changing, getting, broken up in a way?
Yeah. I wasn't too worried about that, actually. And Kyle had auditioned the year before. He tested the year before, and I was like, that's amazing. Like, that's so cool. At that point, it was still like, I don't know how this happens. I don't know how you get on that stage. For us, we were in the process of developing a TV show with Gary Sanchez and Comedy Central. We had done a pilot presentation that was crazy for a small amount of money. And then Comedy Central was like, let's do a real show with a real pilot, real money, and get some showrunners to make sure that this is something that could air on TV. So we were in the process of doing that. But anyway, so like when Kyle auditioned the year before, I was like, yeah, go do it. And then when I was auditioning with him, I was just kind of excited by it all. And I was shooting a movie in Austin, Texas with Nick Rutherford. And I was really just, the only thing I was thinking about was not embarrassing myself. I wasn't even thinking about getting it. I was thinking about just going and having this opportunity and enjoying it, which I think really helped me.
You were more relaxed than you could have been otherwise.
Yeah. And I wasn't caught up in like, what if I get it? What if Kyle doesn't get it? It was just kind of like, just focus on these 5 minutes, make sure you do everything the way you want. I just ran it again and again and again. So when I was up there on stage at the IO audition in Los Angeles or the test, like I wasn't even looking. Some people look over there because their act is a little bit more stand-up maybe as well. But mine was like, I'm doing these characters, I'm doing these impressions. I don't want to fuck up, and then I'm leaving. So yeah. And then, we got the show, and it was definitely hard for the group. But at that point, so we were developing this show, but we had kind of like ebbed and flowed as a group already at that point. We had our moments where we were working well together, and then kind of went our own separate ways, and then kind of came back for opportunities to take advantage of opportunities together. But we were still kind of already going in our separate ways a little bit. It wasn't like we were on that initial rise with our group. So I think at that point it was like a little bit of like, we all have to do what we have to do to, keep our careers moving forward. So yeah.
And saying yes to SNL meant that pilot, you had to say no to the pilot basically, and that wasn't going to happen, right?
Yeah. And, the thing is, we didn't really know we did this presentation. It's a wacky pilot. It was like us living in a house together, but it was a talk show. So we had an audience in our living room, but there was like a plot to it. So like stuff would happen, and it was kind of very like sketchy. It wasn't very grounded. And it was also a drinking game. So like, it was kind of like, watch what happens. A lot of
layers.
What's that? Yeah, a lot of layers. It was a lot going on. And then, so when they were like, this is funny, we love you guys, we don't know what the pilot is, but let's make one. Workaholics had already happened at that point. So they were like, what's your Workaholics? Which is like, well, we're 3 white guys. Like, it almost feels like our Workaholics would be workaholics. Living in a house in LA, doing weird stuff. So we didn't actually have a show. We didn't have like, these are the characters, this is the idea, we're so excited about it. So I think that made it a little bit easier to walk away, because we didn't even know what the pilot was. And then again, it was just a pilot. It wasn't a series. So
As far as I know, you hadn't really done impressions a lot before SNL. So what was that like to have to come up with impressions to do in an audition? 'Cause I know that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I mean, it felt embarrassing, like just doing it by myself, being like, like working on like, because also when you're writing these, when you're writing these impressions, it's always like, so whatever it is, like Christoph Waltz ordering a taco at Taco Bell, and they're like always like I feel like that's how you set it up.
You have to pick a place or
something
it's like an
silly.
improv scene,
Something very
real location.
Something very basic for this extreme version of this person to be in, dealing with everyday things. But yeah, I mean, I remember just working on it, and I had a knack for it. I feel like I can do impressions well without thinking about it, and then if I try to do it again, it's like gone. So I had a little bit of a knack for it. Nothing crazy, not like Jay Farrow or Chloe Fineman level. It was just kind of like, oh, I can kind of do this. And a lot of them, I filmed a lot of them, characters and impressions, sent it to my agent. They sent it to SNL, got notes, made changes, sent it to them again. And they were like, okay, this is in a good place, And then we heard later. But yeah, for that initial round, it was a lot of like, you can't do Nick Cage, even if you have a good one, or like Owen Wilson. Yeah, we've seen it. Like, you got to come up with new stuff. And for my audition, I ended up doing Topher. Wait, what's his name?
Topher Grace?
Not Topher Grace. That's in my head though. Similar. They're similar. Oh my God, Seabiscuit. Who's Spider-Man? Who's Spider-Man?
Toby Maguire.
Tobey Maguire. Yeah, Tobey Maguire, Christoph Waltz, and Philip Seymour Hoffman. And I remember because SNL was considering hiring the group the night before our like live audition at IO West in Los Angeles, we got drinks with Lorne and producers and head writers at the Polo Lounge in Los Angeles. And I think I asked like, yeah, what impressions are you seeing a lot of? And they were like, Christoph Waltz. And I was like, got it. I'm doing that tomorrow. Too late to change. But yeah. It was an interesting
everyone
process.
always talks about how they're not quite sure that they're hired because Lorne might have a meeting with you where he doesn't really say whether you're in the show, but is sort of, it's already assumed. So did you have that experience how did you find out that you were going to be on the show?
He called me. So it was interesting. I had the same sort of thing of like, oh, I did this, but that person didn't do that. But then they did this, but I didn't do that. So what is that? Like, so since we
read the tea leaves.
Yeah, exactly. So we had that meeting with him and everybody else in Los Angeles. So we got to spend some time together then. And then in New York, when we flew out for the test, the night before the test, there was another drinks get together that I was able to make it to and talked with Lorne a little bit then and some other people. And then we do the test. Me and Kyle go out to dinner with his brother, I believe. He gets a phone call and walks out of the restaurant. I like look at my phone. There's nothing. I'm like, God, great. This is it. He's getting a show and I'm not. Okay. All right. And then he like comes back in and like gestures for me to come out because we had the same agents. And they were just like, all right, Beck, you're there too. Yeah. They want you both to stay an extra day. This is, they ask quite a few people. It doesn't mean you get it, but this is where like those stories happen where you test, you stay another day, you get invited to the 17th floor at 30 Rock and you just kind of hang out and you like, there are producers or head writers walking around and you kind of just talk to them. And then every now and then somebody will just get pulled into his office. It's that moment. So we were all waiting for that. And I was just hanging around. And then like 3 hours went by. And then Lindsay Shookus came in and was like, all right, Lorne left. Everybody can go. Thank you so much, you guys. And I was like,
and you don't know.
I don't know. I didn't get it. And I talked to Kyle afterwards. And he was like, yeah, I met with him. And I was like, great. I didn't. Like, I think it's over. I don't think I got it. So yeah, I never had that moment with him where he was talking about it as if I got it. But then they were like, if you get it, you'll know in about a week. They'll call. And I was shooting this movie in Austin and we were shooting nights. So I was like going to bed at 7 a.m., sleeping until noon. And I woke up with a missed call from SNL, called back. And then like, they were like, we have Lorne for you. And yeah, he was like,
Wow.
we think you'll be great on the show. And so we'd like to have you come out. And I told Kyle that he can bring Dave to make videos with you guys. And I think it'll be fantastic. That was that was very fun in Lorne Michaels' impression. But yeah, and I was like, oh my God, I can't, so excited, and got off the phone and called everybody I love and told them that I was moving to New York.
Yeah, I mean, and there was that Lonely Island model, as you said, which was really, making the digital shorts. Did you feel like that was going to be what you guys were doing, was primarily doing that kind of stuff? Because I feel like that's not how it ended up necessarily. I mean, especially for you, you did so much
Yeah.
impressions, political sketches, sort of utility stuff. I mean, the same way Andy Samberg did a lot, but I feel like even on another level that you were doing so much.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I had no idea really. They were kind of like, because we knew that we weren't the Lonely Island sensibility. I mean, they did something so funny and also so accessible to a large audience, like with the music. And so we knew we weren't going to do that. I think they weren't really sure. They didn't have much of a plan. And we just started, writing some ideas. I think early on, one of the frustrating things was they said something along the lines of like, you can't play Beck and Kyle. We want you to play characters. And that was a little challenging, because I think a lot of our ideas were like, it was either like, we did one called Dancing, and we did one that was like Kyle hooking up with Miley Cyrus, and it's sort of more casual, just like us being ourselves and sort of a fun, crazy thing happening in a grounded setting. It's one of the reasons why Please Don't Destroy works so well. It's like they're sitting in this office, they're trying to think of something, and something's about
a format too.
Yeah, and I love those videos. Those guys are so funny. But they were able to play themselves. And I think they wanted us to, I'm not sure exactly where the note came from. They wanted things to look a little bit more professional and not as like gritty, which is another part of our style. So, I think we fought back a little bit as much as we could, but we're also like, well, yeah, we'll take the note. We want to make this work here. And we made some, I think, some really funny videos, but without that musical template, it was every week it was kind of like, well, what are we going to do? And we can't play ourselves, just kind of messing around.
Yeah, I think the other phenomenon of your era at the show was the cut for time sketch, which became a thing, where it was the sketch that didn't make it, and that ended up on the internet. And I feel like that happened with you and Kyle maybe more than other people. Was that something that you were aware of, and were there frustrations around that, or things that you really liked and wanted to be on the show, but that ended up only being on the internet?
Yeah, I mean, and Kyle, the thing about our video, like one of the reasons we've like with our videos, like it really is and always has been. I mean, it's split up a little bit, but Dave being the director and editor, and Dave and Kyle have been the driving force of the videos. They always have been. So sometimes it was kind of a little bit more of them and me helping, or maybe it was an equal idea, but throughout time, it was kind of like a little bit, sometimes it was the three of us and sometimes it was the two of them, a little bit more. So I think Kyle felt a little bit more of that on his shoulder, the being cut for time. And I felt it as well, but sometimes, I wasn't always that frustrated, because you make a video, you hear it at table read, it gets laughs, and then you make it and you show up for a dress audience and they don't laugh.
Yeah.
And you're like, well,
you can't argue with that.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, sometimes I'm sure there were videos that did pretty well and then ended up getting cut, which was a bummer. But yeah, sometimes it's kind of like, well, you got to go with what the audience, how the audience reacted, I guess, a little bit. And then I think when it went online, I was just happy that it was people were getting to see it and pass it around. Because it's really so much of how people watch the show now anyway.
And at the same time that that's happening, you're getting these really big moments in a lot of the political cold opens. You know, I think the shirtless Vladimir Putin became a big character on the show.
Yeah.
Who then recently you did a little cameo in the White Lotus parody, which was fun. You got to come back for that.
Yeah, that was really fun.
And, you know, working with Alec Baldwin in that and playing Mike Pence. So what was, does that stuff have an added pressure to it? You know, whether it's just because it's in the cold open or knowing that Donald Trump might be aware of it or watching it, because I think there was a period where he was pretty aware of what at least Alec Baldwin was up to.
Yeah.
What was that like for you to sort of be at the center of some of that stuff, especially in, you know, 2015, 2016, when all that was going on?
Yeah, I mean, it was so fun, and it was really interesting to see, like, oh, you do one of these political characters and it's going to reach so much farther than anything else. You know, it's like playing on the news, and yes, the president is reacting to it. After I did Putin, Lorne informed me that it was playing on Russian TV, which meant that
it's a little scary.
It's a little scary, but it meant that Vladimir Putin liked it. And
otherwise it wouldn't be on Russian TV.
I think so. Yeah, he wouldn't be like, because the impression serves to skewer our president, you know, and making fun of Donald Trump for being a puppet. And Putin is the smart, you know, cool guy with his shirt off.
So I guess it's no surprise that he liked it.
Yeah. I mean, it was like a little nerve-wracking that I was on his radar, and like, but that went away pretty quickly. And really it was just like, yeah, I mean, the pressure is definitely on to make it work. The cold opens are definitely so much more pressure. The whole studio is quiet. They're doing a countdown, and it's like, here we go. You're not in the rhythm of the show already. And yeah, I think, you know, there are some people on the show that are so good with making those impressions loose and fun. Like Kate, she's just like, you know, like she's not, you don't see her trying to hit the mark. You know, you just see her being like, this is my take on it. And it's silly and it's accurate and it's fun and it's loose. So I think I was able to get that with Putin, which is nice. But yeah, it can be like, oh, it is such a, I think, a specific art of doing, or like that, whatever the job is, of making a political impression on a live sketch show work when there's such a history of so many people doing so well with it. So yeah, there was pressure, but then once it was figured out, it was a huge relief. And then like seeing how it connected, and kind of like made people realize I was on the show was pretty profoundly different than anything else I had done on the show. So then it became just really fun to do.
You were, of course, there in 2015 when Trump hosted the show, which obviously was a whole thing.
Yeah.
What are your memories from that week? Because I think everyone has a different take on it, and you know, it's looked at maybe differently now than it was at the time. But even then, it was definitely a controversial decision.
Yeah.
But what did you make of that, and did you have to sort of interact with him at all as a performer?
So yeah, when he was in the building, yeah, people were upset about it. I remember everybody kind of had a similar feeling that after the week after, I think that was like maybe it was the first show in a run of 3 or something like that, or maybe it was the second, but like the next week afterwards, we were all exhausted, like felt kind of like sick, just like, oh, that was a lot to deal with.
Didn't feel good.
No, I mean, he walked around by himself. You know, a lot of people have like agents or managers or personal assistants, or they're like stylists or whatever. He was just kind of like walking around by himself. He at the table read, he was having a little bit of trouble reading, or like he took a call that was clearly there was some problem, and he was like, figure it out, deal with it. And then he hung up the phone, and Leslie Jones was like, how much money did you just make on that phone call, and everybody laughed. He like interrupted the table read to take this phone call. And he was like, and he goes, everybody laughs, and he goes, my book just went to #1. And everybody clapped. And it was like, really? It didn't sound like you were dealing with the news that your book went to #1, but okay. You know, he's always kind of like, when we were doing sketches, he would kind of give notes and say things, and he would be corrected, and then he'd be like, no, that's what I said. You know, like it was just kind of, he was just kind of, what's the word? Just kind of loafing around. And every time he was corrected, he was like, no, that's what I said. I'm right. But besides that, it was just a lot to have him there. He wasn't particularly awful beyond that, I don't think. You know, I think I remember, as far as having billionaire personalities come on the show, Elon Musk was a lot more offensive.
Oh yeah, that was rude. Right. That was sort of right at the end of your run, right?
Yeah, that was my last year. Yeah,
that was harder to deal with.
Yeah, he had very odd ideas, and he was very rude and less predictable to perform with. And yeah, just like in a way, Trump was a little bit more like, yeah, you tell me where to go and what to say, and I'll tell you if I'm okay with that, but I'm not going to come in with all these ideas and try to like,
Elon Musk thinks that he knew what was funnier than all of you guys.
Right. Which you would think that Donald probably would have been leading more with that energy, but I think he just was like, he was kind of more like, yeah, whatever. You know. But yeah, it was draining. It was a lot to.
Yeah. On the flip side of that, was there a host during your years there that you felt like you worked really well with, or was sort of surprising in how they fit into your comedy that you do?
One of the people I say is Larry David, because I just got along with him so well. He was so funny. He's very much Larry David in every interaction. He's always kind of doing bits with you, and like he's like having fun and laughing, and yeah, we did a sketch with him called Beers, which was really fun to see how he fit into that.
I did make it on the show, right?
Yes, yeah. And he always kind of talks about how he had fun with that. And he was also at the show a lot playing Bernie. So he was around a lot. So yeah, I got to like, there were other hosts that I feel like I had that with, that maybe were just, that just hosted once when I was there. But as far as somebody continuing to come back and fit into our humor in a fun way and just get along with him really well and have a great time, that was Larry.
And then of course, after, I think you were there 8 seasons, right? Was that decision to leave, I guess first of all, was it your decision to leave after that time? And was it a hard thing to decide that you wanted to do, to leave the show? Yeah,
it was my decision. What made it easier is that me and my wife was pregnant. She was like about 3 months pregnant the last week of the show, which is right at that time when they say it's okay to start telling people, because chances are it's going to be a healthy pregnancy and everything's going to be okay. Like all the final testing was done. And so, yeah, I mean, I knew that we didn't want to start having a family in New York, but just because of how, it's expensive, smaller apartment, it's hectic, it's loud. We had a house in LA that we felt good about starting things off there. And all of our friends and family were there. So like, not family as much, but like a lot of our friends were there. So that was really clear to us, but it was challenging to figure out how I was going to tell Lorne. And leading those last 3 weeks, there was a sketch that I was trying to get on that I put to the table read, and they said, not this week, put it on bring it back next week. And I did, and it still didn't get picked. And I was just like, fuck you, you're fucking with me. Like, you just like, oh, this is why I'm leaving. And, like, you're not communicating clearly with me about this. So I'm not going to communicate clearly with you about leaving. And it was that last week, me and Adie were shooting a video, and I was able to tell her, she's a good friend of mine, and I was able to tell her that Jessie was pregnant. I was like, yeah, so I'm leaving, and this is it. And I don't want to tell Lorne. And she was like, I really I get that, but I really think you might regret that. I think you're gonna appreciate having told him in person. And she was like, she's the best. She's like I would always go to her, and like honestly, like she was so helpful. She's like a very wise, caring person who will always listen and help you out. And so I took her advice and I asked for a meeting with Lorne in between dress and air on that last show. And I told him that Jessie was pregnant and we were leaving to LA to start a family. And he was kind of like, yeah, like he was like, look, you can't always be in the house, and, the family needs to make money. So, it's nice to take the family on vacations and stuff and do all these things. So, yeah, well, they kind of like left it open, but I was kind of like, but I am leaving. He was like, yeah, we'll talk. I
was
like,
kind of trying to talk you into staying.
Yeah. And then there was an offer for me to come back the next week from NBC, which was very, it was hard to say no to, because it was like more years. And, but it was having the baby. It was just a clear, like, we're going to do this, and there's nothing that can really change my mind about it. So I walked away, which was hard. And, and then coming back for the 50th was just a really great sort of, I don't know. I don't know what the word is. Just kind of tied everything together and made me feel like, oh, it is true. Once you've done the show, even if you're not on it, you're always an SNL cast member. And I felt very welcomed going back there and included in the show, and had a great interaction with Lorne. He immediately asked me to see a photo of my son. And, was like, you're always welcome back. You're always a part of this. And so that was very sweet. And so, yeah, now I'm just kind of like, I think for a while it was like, oh, like, what does that look like when I go back? Am I like, am I going to be the guy who like doesn't get it? And like, people are like, hey, how's it going? And like, even like, I got there and me and Sarah Sherman had so much fun, but I was like, am I going to be like the not cool one? Like, you know what I mean? Like, am I going to be accepted with this new group of people and everything? And, but I, I was, and it's a really sweet, like, fraternity, that you're always a part of. So now I'm at the point where I'm like, yeah, when they call, I can't wait to go back and be a part of it. And I did that with the White POTUS sketch, and yeah, looking forward to going back again.
Yeah, and you did the Domingo sketch where you got to be with Kyle, which was fun.
That was very fun.
I was curious because you were there. You were a cast member for the 40th, right?
Yes, yeah, that was my second year.
Sort of, I feel like the current cast members get a little sidelined at these big anniversary shows. They get some stuff to do.
Yeah.
So what was it? How did it differ being there for the 40th as a cast member versus being at the 50th as a alumni?
Oh yeah, I mean, so my second year, the 40th, after that second year, I was put on hold. Usually you get told if your contract is renewed in the middle of July. I got put on hold until like the end of August, basically almost till the end. I was, it's a stressful show. I had not gone to therapy. I got to therapy a little bit, but that was the year I found a good therapist. And I was dealing with a lot of my stress and anxiety with food and alcohol, and was gaining a lot of weight, and was just like not being healthy. And I was kind of like figuring that out, being like, oh, how do I deal with this in a healthy way and take care of myself and all that. But around the time of the 40th, I was like, I might be gone next year. I'm just going to like enjoy this and have as much fun as possible and say hi to people and be like, I work here. And so I did that. Yeah. I mean, it was kind of similar. It was just a lot of fun. I don't think I was introducing myself to a lot of people, and like, I still just kind of couldn't believe I was a part of it. And then for the 50th, I mean, it was different because like they flew me in, put me and my wife up at the plaza, and I was going in for rehearsals. And so then I was like, the first day, like at rehearsals with like Paul Rudd and Lin-Manuel Miranda and like Kristen Wiig is there, and like meeting Marcelo and seeing Kyle and seeing Heidi and Ego, and like it was just and I wasn't doing that for the 40th. It was really just about being in the audience at the show, and that was like cool. But this time around, it was like, oh, this is like, I was really, it was just really heartwarming to see everybody and then like be a part of it in this way. Yeah, it was just a little bit more like, oh, I was a part of this show's history, and that is, and it's really, it just felt great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that thing you said about once you're an SNL cast member, you're sort of always an SNL cast member, and you'll always be referred to that way.
It's kind of usually going to be like the leading credit. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's obviously a lot of pros to that, I think. Do you feel like there are cons to that, or there are negatives to sort of that always defining you?
I mean, potentially, but I don't know. Because like, I think the only negative thing would be like, oh, you're from SNL, so you play, bigger, sillier characters, and you're going to be.
It's limiting you from doing more serious stuff or being taken seriously.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know if that's really the case, and I don't think anyone would ever really know. I think there are plenty of actors. I feel like there are plenty of cast members who have gone on to do more serious stuff, and I think though, like, because my experience afterwards is like, if you're right for something, you're right for something. And it may take a second for a little bit of the SNL, the idea of you as an SNL sketch actor to wear off a little bit, but I don't think that really prevents people. I think people like the idea of casting somebody who's known for something and can switch and do something else, because that's kind of exciting for the project. And it kind of is, I feel so. I think people are open to that. And I think more than anything, it opens more doors than closes them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that you've done a lot of since leaving is animation and voiceover. It seems like you've gotten a lot of opportunities for that, including this new movie, Fixed. What do you enjoy about doing that voiceover work, maybe compared to sketch? Because it is very different and requires different kind of skills and commitment and all that. So how has that been? Getting the opportunity to do more of that, since leaving SNL. Yeah,
well, I mean, honestly, in a way, it is kind of similar to sketch, to me at least, because it is like you get to be really silly and big. You get to make a voice, and I was also doing so much voiceover at SNL. I was always in the voiceover booth doing voices for commercials or
the narrator.
Yes, yeah, doing a lot of that. But what I love about it is that you can just go in there and be silly for an hour or two or three and then go home. I mean, like, the reality to shooting stuff on camera is that it often shoots outside of Los Angeles, and I have a 3.5-year-old son. So, and I've gone away for a couple weeks here and there to do different movies or jobs. But what I love about it is it really just allows me to be with my son and be, an active father and be around especially for these early times, before he's like running off with his friends and doing his own thing. So yeah, I love how silly it allows me to be, and how much it allows me to be home.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people I hear, they get into animation because they want to make something that their kids can see. Fixed is not that.
Fixed is not that. No.
Yeah. So what drew you to this one when you heard about it and got the opportunity?
Well, it was Gendy Tartakovsky, and I know his work, which is great. And then the cast was amazing, because I think I came on a little bit later. And then I really liked this character Sterling, who's an obnoxious sort of country club style asshole who thinks he's better than everybody. A friend of mine, Kevin Costello, who's an incredible screenwriter, had done a pass on it and written some jokes on it. So it was kind of like, yeah, this all makes sense. And I thought a lot of it was very funny. And, crude and or like whatever, raunchy and everything. But it's I didn't know what that was going to look like until I saw the movie, because it's,
Yeah.
you don't, it's, yeah. So it was a whole nother thing when I saw the movie, and it was like, oh wow, yeah, it really goes
They're really
there.
going for it.
They're really, they're really going for it with these dogs having a lot of sex and stuff, and a lot of buttholes. And yeah, it was. I think it's such a fun, silly movie. It's definitely not for everybody, and I could see it turning some people the wrong way. But it's fun to be a part of something like this that just like that is going for it and making a choice and being silly and being like, yeah, we can laugh at this, and so yeah, I was really happy with it and happy to be a part of it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Superman, I feel like, is on a whole other scale. That's probably the largest project that you've done to date, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was that like to enter that world, and especially knowing that it's going to be so scrutinized by fans and getting a lot more attention than probably a lot of other stuff that you've done.
Yeah. I mean, it was so cool to be a part of. Like, it felt like, a lot of times you get to do something and you're like, oh, this is work, like whether it's SNL or any other, and it can happen anywhere with any project. And I mean, it was such a slow build from like getting it. I got the call and was like, oh, I got it, but I don't know what my part is. I auditioned with these dummy sides. And then a month or two later, got the sides from the movie that pertained to my character. And I saw the name had been changed to Steve Lombard. And nobody told me that he was in the comics. Like, nobody was like, you are playing this character. He is a part of the Superman universe. So I just like looked it up and was like, oh, whoa. Like, because I was really like, maybe this is just an obnoxious guy at the Daily Planet, and they're trying it, and they might just cut him out completely.
Yeah, might not even make the cut.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, I'm part of like the real part of the crew of the Daily Planet. And then yeah, we went to go shoot, and it was just so fun. And the cast and the crew, everybody was so sweet. James makes a point. He has like a no assholes policy, and he really tries to check to make sure that everybody's going to be nice to work with and a team player. So it was such a fun environment, and that put me at ease in such a, these huge sets with so many moving parts, where James is giving direction through what they call a God mic. He's like in Video Village, and it's just his booming voice giving you direction. And it was a blast. Like, we were on these big fun sets. Like, the Daily Planet is so big, and it's like he got that building because it's longer than a typical studio size, and so we could really have that opening where I'm yelling at Clark Kent and he's talking to his parents, and have that full conversation, and we just go and go again, and it was really fun. And then getting to be on a spaceship and flying around on like a gimbal and like a big sound stage, and then being in Cleveland, where they made that street all ripped up, and there were all these like fire trucks and tanks and all these things. So it was so cool. Like, a lot of times when you shoot something, you're like, oh, I wonder how this is going to look. They shoot it in a way where it does look all right. But it felt like with this, like, you were really in these places. And so it was really fun. And James just like is so fun. He lets us like improvise and run with stuff. And then I had to like wait a year. And then there was all this anticipation. It's so wild because everybody knows Superman, for people to be like, Superman, it's coming out. Have you seen it? Is it good? Are you excited? And then like all this press, and it's just so much buildup. I like 2 weeks before, I had to be like, just calm down. Like, it's a movie. You have a small part in this fun movie. It's not going to like change your life. It's going to come out, and then I had to like settle myself down a little bit, but and it came out, and I love the movie. I think it has so much heart, and it's funny, and like an improvised thing that I did got in there, which a lot of people are seeming to respond to, where I yell, why don't I have a seat? When I'm in Mr. Terrific's Tea Craft. And yeah, it's just been cool to see people enjoying it and seeing like the positive message behind it. And yeah, I'm excited to, hoping that Steve gets to pop up in other DC projects, but we'll see.
Yeah. Now you're part of the universe.
Exactly. I helped launch that universe. You know what I mean? I launched that almost single-handedly.
So this fall, you are going to be reuniting with Good Neighbor, I saw, as part of Kyle Mooney's tour, his music tour, his very serious, solo music project.
Yeah.
So are you looking forward to that? Are you to getting back with the group? Will that be the first time in a while?
It'll be the first time in 10 years, which is crazy. I really can't believe it. Yeah, I think we're just going to do, I don't want to give anything away. I think it's going to be pretty brief. It's still Kyle's tour, and we're just making a little appearance at the end. But yeah, I'm just so excited to be back on stage as a group and doing something that I think fans really like. And ideally it'd be like, oh, this was great. Let's find a way how can we find a way to do this again in a way that works for all of our busy lives, So we'll see. Yeah, I'm excited.
And I believe you're also starting a podcast with Kyle. Is that right?
That is right. Yeah. It's called What's Our Podcast? We're doing it with HeadGum. And the idea is that we don't know what our podcast should be about. So we have guests on, we talk to them for a little bit, and then they give us a suggestion for what they think our podcast should be about. And then we go into a different studio and try doing that podcast. And it can be anything. It could be something you saw on your way in, but we don't know until they tell us in the moment. So we've had jeans, beef. We had something that was called Sinner's Delight. And we were like, I don't know what that's going to be, but let's just go do the podcast. And it's just it can be we can be talking about it in the moment. Sometimes the guests will be like, wait, is this right? Is this what we're supposed to be doing? And we'll be like, yeah, sure, whatever. It just kind of
is what it is.
Yeah. And it's been really fun to sort of just inject this curveball into the conversation and get to make something with these guests. And it's it's not improv. It's just a conversation because it's not we're playing characters or whatever, really. And it's just it's kind of a fun way to have a bitty conversation. That's a continuation of what we've started. So yeah, we've recorded 15 of them already, and which is weird because we have a whole podcast and nobody's ever listened to it. So it comes out on August 27th, and then we have 2 episodes coming out that day. Our friend Fran Gillespie, who incredibly funny writer who we wrote with at SNL, and Mark Maron come out on the 27th, and then a new one every Wednesday after that.
So now it's time for our segment on the show called The First Laugh. So this is our speed round at the end. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions, starting with the first piece of comedy that you remember making you laugh really hard as a kid growing up.
My first one. Oh, well, I think I was going to say Eddie Murphy's Raw, right? Was Raw the first one or Delirious? I feel
like it was Delirious, but I don't know.
Maybe Delirious. His first comedy special with the red leather suit. That was more in junior high, but I remember seeing that with my friends in a basement and just laughing so hard. I guess the other real moment was I was probably younger. Yeah, I was definitely younger. And I heard my dad and brother watching a movie and laughing, and it was Blazing Saddles. And I snuck down and saw the scene where they're at the campfire and they're all farting. Mm-hmm. And I just was they were laughing and I was trying to contain myself and then burst out laughing. And my mom was like, Beck, what do go to bed.
Yeah.
I was go. But yeah, those are 2 moments early on that really, really stood out to me. Yeah.
What about the first time that you knew that you were funny, that you could make other people laugh?
Oh, I guess that was probably, I remember in preschool running around doing the the tequila dance from Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure when he's on the bar and doing this thing. And I would run around the playground and people would chase me to try to get me. And I'd be running around going in
preschool.
Yeah, wow. In preschool. So that was my first time. And then my parents also had I think it was around that time they had like a dress up bin, and I would like put costumes on and just like be silly in front of them and their friends when they had like dinner parties and stuff. So, but yeah, it's kind of, if there was a specific moment, it'd probably be the Pee Wee Herman run dance in preschool.
You had a pretty unique experience of getting famous from a commercial, the AT&T commercial, where you're talking to kids.
Yeah.
So much so that I saw that you were profiled in the Daily Beast in 2013
Oh, wow.
for that commercial. This is pre-SNL.
Wow.
There was an interview with you about that.
Amazing.
So what was that like to have that experience of getting famous from a commercial, which is, it doesn't happen too often, I don't think.
Yeah. That was so fun. I had done a YouTube series called Fresh Perspectives, where I talked to kids about politics. And I went in for the audition, and they had the board up, and it was kind of exactly how I pitched my YouTube series. And I read it, and I went over to the casting director, and I've never done anything like this before, but I was like, I do this. Because I didn't know what it was.
This is my bit.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't know what the audition was until I got there. And I was like, no, pull it up. And she pulled it up. And she's like, oh, wow, you do this. And then Jorma Taccone, I always struggle with his name, was directing it. And I hadn't met him yet. And I think the casting director showed him the video. And he was like, they want somebody older, but you do this. And I want you to get it. And we at first it was like a non-union internet thing. And I was like, trust me, you got to let the kids talk. It's scary at first because you don't know what they're going to say. And Jorma would throw me things to say or have them say, but he trusted me and it worked. And then they built it into, they tried the national campaign and it just took off. And so it was really fun to do with him. And then that's when the SNL stuff came up, and he was really helpful in giving me advice for those meetings and auditions and everything. So yeah, it was fun. It was really a lot of residuals.
Yeah, I'm sure. It was a big one.
It was really fun checking my mailbox. Yeah, that was a blast.
We obviously talked a lot about SNL, but what do you remember about your the very first thing you did on the show in that first episode? Assuming you were in the first episode that you were a cast member.
Man, I don't even remember. I mean, I remember dancing on stage with Tina Fey. And just being like, is this what they want? Kind of
she hosted your first episode.
Right? Yeah. It was Tina Fey and Arcade Fire. I think we had a video on, or maybe we showed it at dress rehearsal and it didn't make the show. Man, I barely remember it, to be honest. I don't remember anything else I did in that episode. But it was just incredibly scary and exciting, and that's what I remember. It was very much what is happening? Is this right? Am I doing this right? How did that go?
Is this real?
Yeah, a lot of that. Yeah.
Was there a first sketch that you wrote that you were really excited about, that was sort of your thing that you got on the show?
I guess that would probably be the first time I did Baby Boss. This character that I auditioned with, and Sarah Schneider and Chris Kelly were the writers on that. They really, did a lot of the actual writing, but it was my character, and they got in the room with me, and we were coming up with it together. So yeah, it was definitely the first thing that felt like mine, that I got on the show, and we did it. I think we did it first with Miley Cyrus, and Lorne was like, it didn't make it. And he was like, the office setup wasn't right. I was just I was like a businessman at an office. And he's like, you need to be a brilliant CEO with your own corner office, and somebody's coming into your office, which I think was a very, very smart note. And it made it work. So then we eventually did it with, I think Josh Hutcherson was the next time we did it.
Yeah, I was curious what came first, Baby Boss or Boss Baby, which ended up being an Alec Baldwin vehicle. Yeah,
I think, for a second there when it came out, people were like, oh, they took that from you. But
yeah,
I think that book or the source material, was it Pam Brady to shoot, or somebody else?
My kids read that book, so I don't know how old that book is.
Okay, I think it came out in 2010. So yeah, it was coincidental. I think it would have been cool to give me a small part in that incredibly successful franchise.
Obviously you meet so many incredibly famous people at SNL. Is there anyone who you met that was a comedy hero of yours that you got to meet for the first time, whether it was at SNL or anywhere else, that really stands out in your mind as getting to meet someone who you really looked up to?
Yeah. I mean, so many. But if I'm going to pick one, I guess it would be Adam Sandler. I think he's a huge comedic presence for a lot of people. And I was just lucky that I was in a lot of that show and got to spend a lot of time around him and do some really silly, stupid stuff. And he was just so awesome to be around and supportive. And I remember seeing him at a party a couple months after he hosted, and he was like, "Hey," and he beelined over to me to talk to me and meet my wife. And he's just really down to earth and cool like that. So that was a very gratifying experience.
It was such a big deal when he came back and hosted too, because he hadn't done it, right?
Yeah, it was his first time coming back. So yeah, that was awesome.
The last question we ask on the show, is there a story or memory from your career that makes you laugh now, but really was not funny when it happened?
From my career, is there anything? So say it again. It's anything that
makes you laugh now, but just was not funny when it happened. Once it took time for it to become funny.
The thing that stands out, because I don't remember too many misfires. I did a lot of commercials early on where I'm sure there was something that was stressful in the moment, and then it was not a big deal at all. I got fired once. I don't know if I don't know if it's technically fired, because I got cast. It was around the time of the AT&T commercials, and I got an audition, but it was kind of it was almost like an offer, because I think they wrote the part because they saw the AT&T commercials, but it was for Last Man Standing, the Tim Allen show. And I was a cop, and Tim Allen's character was in a holding cell or something. He did something, and I was playing a very sarcastic, dry cop, and went to the table read. I remember I was at the end of this long table, and he comes in last, and he looks towards me and he waves. And I was like, oh, he knows the commercials too. They must have thought it was funny. And he's waving to me. He recognizes me. And I go to wave. And then the girl next to me, who's a regular on the show, turns to him and goes, "Hey." He's like, "How was vacation?" I'm just standing there behind her with my hand up, and I put it down slowly. And we do the table read. I go to my room, and they're like, "All right, you actually don't need to rehearse today. We're not going to get to your scene." And then got the call from my agents that it was not happening. That the part was cut. And I was like, oh, it's because I was awkward with Tim Allen. I said hi, and he was like, "I don't want this guy anywhere near me." And it was like, man, and I hadn't really done much TV at all. And I was like, this sucks. I was bummed. I still got paid, but it was definitely, it was a moment where I was like, what is going on? I just can't even make this happen.
Yeah.
And then it quickly became pretty funny and silly. And just the idea of maybe it happened because I waved to Tim Allen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Beck, thank you so much for doing this. I've loved your work for so long, and it's just been great to talk with you, and congrats on everything. And I'll be looking out for your new podcast.
Thanks, man.
Very fun.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It was so nice talking to you. This was such a wonderful, wonderful interview. I appreciate it.